Good-looking people, they got no spine. Their art never lasts. And they get the girls, but we're smarter.
Yeah, I can really see that now.
Yeah, because great art is about guilt and longing and, love disguises sex and sex disguises love. Hey, let's face it. You got a big head start.
I'm glad you were home.
I'm always home. I'm uncool.
Me too.
You're doing great. The only true currency in this bankrupt world is what you share with someone else when you're uncool.
Welcome to Money Unplugged. I'm Chris Hill. Thanks for being here. And a special welcome if you heard me earlier this week on David Gardner's podcast and this is your first time listening. Let me tell you the premise of the show. Everyone has a relationship with money. You, me, everyone. And each week on Money Unplugged, I talk with a guest about their life through the lens of money, what it was like growing up, their first job as a kid, how money changed over time, that sort of thing. And if you look at the episodes I've done over the last 6 months, there's a lot of those conversations, and I'll be doing more of them starting in September. But this is ad-free August, so no ads this month, and the format is a little different. This week, it is part 2 of my conversation with Ross Anderson and Dan Messeca about money in the music industry. Ross and Dan are certified financial planners, co-founders of the firm Craftwork Capital, and co-hosts of the financial podcast Check Your Balances, which is a great show. I have been a regular listener since they launched it a few years ago. Last week, we talked about behind-the-scenes stories about money in the music industry. We talked about songs that actually have good financial advice. This week, we talk about songs that have bad advice. We talk about musical artists who are really smart with how they have managed their financial lives. And we talk about documentaries and feature films with great stories about money in the music industry. We had a lot of fun, so I hope you enjoy this. Let's get to it. Are there songs that have particularly bad advice? And I know there are. I'm just wondering, are there any that sort of stick out to you as being like, this is really bad. This is kind of a train wreck. The only one that sort of leaps to mind for me is less. I shouldn't say less about money because it is partly about money, but it's really a song about the bad decisions you make regarding money when you're making bad decisions in your personal life, and that's Katy Perry, Waking Up in Vegas, which is just really the song version of the movie The Hangover. Like, it's just a fun song about waking up in Vegas after a night of bad decisions. And how do you fix those bad decisions? How do you get out of those problems? You got to throw a lot of money at it.
I thought of Hall & Oates' Rich Girl, where they say specifically, you can rely on your old man's money. That may be true, but it's not always true. And I think whenever we do financial planning, I typically put that pool of money. It's like, all right, you might get some money, but we're going to put that on the side for a minute because you don't have that money right now. So let's plan with what we've got. Don't go crazy yet. That might come, but you should not rely on the old man's money just yet.
That sounds like a song that's going to go on the Craftwork Capital holiday CD that you give out to clients.
I'll do the vocals.
Yeah, we cannot afford the rights to that. That is not something we're going to do.
Ross, what about you?
There's so many of these silly hip hop songs that are about wasting money. The one that I'm going to talk about is from a guy named Chainz. The song is called "Spend It," and the entire song is I'm riding around, I'm getting it, it's mine, I spend it. Like that's how I think so many people treat money. If I spent all this work to get there, why did I do that? What was I trying to buy with it? Especially if I'm giving a rapper advice, I would tell them, hey, this doesn't last forever, right? I think a music career is really interesting because it can be forever, or it could be like a football player where your average length of time is so brief. You may be a flash in the pan and never chart again. A hit single, if you make money one time and you're wanting to live that high, it can be really, really challenging because you don't know if you're going to have longevity. And I think 2 Chainz has had other hits and has put out other songs, but I hope that he did save a little bit of it and that he did not spend every dime of what he was riding around and getting.
No, it's a great point. A friend of mine has worked in the music industry for a long time, specifically around rights. And I asked him recently about royalty payments. And I started to ask this long, winding question, and he just cut me off. He said, I know what you're asking. And the answer is 90% of royalty payments come from 10% of the songs. Like whoever the artist is, whoever the band is, 90% of the royalty payments they get are from 10% of the songs. Like, even if they have 7 albums, it's really just coming from those few big hits.
And that's why they're still touring.
Exactly. Before we offer up some flowers for musical artists who have shown a high level of financial acumen, I'm curious if there's not a song so much as a lyric that you find funny that has to do with money, either in positive ways or negative ways. I just kind of stumbled upon this the other day, just hearing a song. But I'm curious if either of you have one. For me, it was Robert Palmer, Simply Irresistible, which was like a legitimately big hit pop song in the late 1980s. And there's this line in the chorus that I had never really focused on until I heard it the other day, which is, and look, the song is simply irresistible. It is a tale as old as musical time, which is a guy singing about a girl who he can't resist. She's so amazing. But the line in the chorus that got me was, she's so fine, there's no telling where the money went. And I was like, oh, yeah, I guess sometimes I think we've, if we haven't been that guy, we're friends with a guy like that who's like just dating someone and it's just like, where did all your money go? He's like, I don't know. I spent it all on her.
Trying to impress somebody.
I was trying to impress her, and now I have no money.
I'll go back to Taxman because I need to throw the Beatles back into the conversation somewhere. One of the things George says is, my advice to those who die, declare the pennies in your eyes, because he learned about like death taxes. He's like, oh, they're going to get you when you're dead too. Those pennies, you better put them on there. And I just thought it was so funny, just how bitter he clearly was in writing this song.
I didn't realize that's the backstory of the song Taxman. I don't know. I don't know what I thought it was. I thought it was just, they're singing about another occupation. Like they have a song about being a paperback writer.
Yeah. Yeah. Very colloquial occupation you can have. I think, I could be wrong here. I think the Beatles were legitimately in a 95% tax bracket. So when he sings 1 for you, 19 for me, which is very specific, I mean, that's what he's talking about. And I just can't believe. And they're finding it out for the first time, right? They're finally starting to believe they're making money. And then they're like, well, where did it all go? That guy, Taxman's got it.
I'm also going to give a tax reference. I'm doing like weird deep cuts that nobody's going to know. And I'm sorry. There was a Ludacris song called Large Amounts. It wasn't even a hit. It was on an album that I had in college. And at one point he starts talking about the IRS. And he basically says in the song, the IRS will never sweat me or even put up a fight because I'm sure I've paid more taxes than you've made in your life. And then he starts going off on this rant. And he goes, don't play with the IRS. There's nothing more embarrassing than having them come and take all your stuff. And talks about some of the heroes that basically got in trouble with taxes. Red Fox, Willie Nelson, Peebo Bryson. And he was basically, I don't know. It clearly was this reckoning of like somebody that was being silly, but clearly had an understanding of actually how serious this is, that the IRS is not to be played with. And I really always thought that was funny to have in a hip hop song that he's calling out like, man, I've paid a lot in taxes. Don't mess with these people.
Yeah. Things not to mess with, the Wu-Tang Clan and the IRS.
Yeah. And that has always stuck out as like hearing him say that. I'm like, yeah, that's probably good advice. I also don't want to mess with the IRS. I am not in the same tax bracket as Ludacris. I don't think I ever will be. But in that era, it was clearly something that he thought about, and enough so to put it into an album.
So is Ludacris your artist that you would cite as like, this person has been really smart about money. They've managed their career in the right way. They've been smart with their business decisions. Or is there someone else you want to nominate?
It's hard. It's hard to look at a music artist and find somebody that's doing it better from a business perspective than Taylor Swift. I mean, it just is. The scuffle with her music catalog, and I'm not really sure how she lost the rights to that, then had to go back after it, but ended up reacquiring after devaluing her rights. And all of her fans were like, oh, okay, good. We can listen to the old albums again. We appreciate that. Thank you. We are happy to have the old stuff back, even though you put out new versions of it. I think Jay-Z has also been an interesting artist. If you look at his business dealings of having been involved in professional sports, bought part of a team, and then was like, I think I can make more as an agent. And you can't be a representative of the athlete and an owner because you're on both sides of the deal. So gives up and sells his ownership in the team to open an agency where he can then fight for sports and music contracts. So those would probably be my two best examples of people that seem to really have the business side right in terms of their music career.
Yeah, it's hard not to put Taylor Swift in that category. Someone who's, I would never want to be on the wrong side of a negotiation with her ever. But at the same time, she is just so delightful a person that has, millions and millions of adoring fans, myself included, who have her back no matter what she's going through. I also think of people like, to a much lesser extent, someone like Sammy Hagar, who has been successful at music and built like a very much lifestyle brand through his tequila company. I feel like he's the type of guy who has a corner carved out in the world of just like relaxing and having a good time. And he can parlay that into money if he ever wanted to. I think of people like that as doing a really good job as well.
I mean, hearing you say that, Dan, the one that brings up, may he rest in peace, is Jimmy Buffett. I mean, Jimmy Buffett's business dealings were remarkable. I worked in college in a Jimmy Buffett themed restaurant called Cheeseburger in Paradise. Here's how crazy that restaurant was. They played the song Cheeseburger in Paradise every hour on the hour. You could tell time with it. It was super annoying. I was very tired of it.
I was saying my personal hell.
Yeah, no, it was a nightmare in many ways. And at the same time, we're in a restaurant that I'm sure he's getting royalties on because they're using his name, his likeness, his brand. We're playing his music that I think we're probably paying him royalties on. Well, it's so layered. And then he came out with a beer while I was working there called Land Shark that now so now we're distributing his other lines. I mean, he was a pretty shrewd business guy that I think maybe didn't get enough respect for that, given that his music was basically about relaxing on the beach most of the time.
Yeah, there's something about the alcohol offshoot businesses for musical artists and for, athletes and actors where it's like, oh, and also I have this whiskey brand, that sort of thing. And I look at those deals and I think, can I see the fine print? Not that I'm suspect or anything, but I'm just curious, like, how much money are they making off of that? I know it's more than zero, and maybe the effort is minimal. So it's like, well, any money we make off of this is just icing on the cake. But I do always wonder about those types of deals.
Yeah, we're taking it back to movies for a second, although music adjacent, I will add. Dan Aykroyd had a vodka brand. I was like, this is such an odd pairing. And I went to get a vodka signed by him because it's Dan Aykroyd. I wasn't going to miss that. But I was just wondering, like, what transpired that Dan Aykroyd is sitting here in 2008 or whatever year it was, signing vodka bottles for people like me.
I think of it almost as making a ton of sense, actually. And like if you put me in front of an aisle in the liquor store of vodka, I would bet in a blind taste test, I can't guess the bottom shelf bottle from the top shelf. Maybe I could, but it's pure branding. So the whole thing is, can you draw somebody's eye? And if I'm looking at it going like, oh yeah, that's Dan Aykroyd's vodka, like maybe I pick that one up because it just happens to be the one out of 75 brands on the shelf that I look at. To me, that makes sense because it's in whiskey, it's different, I think, because I do think whiskey people get really, really into it, maybe to an obnoxious level at sometimes, but like, especially in a homogenous product category where you're like, yeah, I can't really tell the difference between these. Sure, I'll buy my favorite artist's version because who cares? I got to buy something.
Just real quick, I will mention David Bowie as someone who, for all his music and, when you think about David Bowie, you think about his music, you think about the different iconic looks that he had on stage, the sort of Ziggy Stardust and all these different personalities. And they completely overshadow the fact that the guy was brilliant when it came to money and music. Early in his career, he rejected the standard deal where the label's like, well, we'll give you this money up front, but then we get the rights and the royalties. And he completely bet on himself, and he was like, no, I'll take the royalties. Like, you don't have to pay me up front. And then at the end of his career, with the rise of Napster and digital downloads and all that sort of thing, he very calmly, rationally decided, I think my royalties are going to be worth less. And so he took his music catalog and securitized it into a bond. And the guy was just a genius when it came to money, which is incredible on top of all the artistry as well. Last thing, we touched on this a little bit, but I'd love if we could make some recommendations for people listening about things to watch. We've given a lot of recommendations for things to listen to, but Dan, is there a documentary around music or a musical artist that you would recommend, in part because the money stories associated are interesting?
Yeah, I watch a lot of music documentaries, and the one that struck me first is a movie called Hired Guns.
You took mine, Dan.
How is that possible?
This is because I don't watch that many of these. You had a deep bench and you stole mine. All right,
that was a good one. We think of the top tier names, right, in music, but I think it's really interesting to know how their supporting cast does and how they're able to make a living. And sometimes it's very challenging. So this talks about like the guitar player for Kelly Clarkson, or the drummer. Billy Joel's drummer is featured prominently in the movie too, and just how about their financial dealings are very different than the headline name, and it can be very difficult to make a living, and you're basically functioning at the whim of the talent. Yeah, it's a great documentary.
And is this largely about studio performances, or is it, no, we want you to come on tour with us?
A lot of touring artists, but both. So, Billy Joel's band recorded with him in the studio. It was a big fight, actually, because he wanted his guys in the studio, and I forget which producer it was, wanted studio musicians. They're like, you don't need those guys. Get the studio players, come knock it out real quick. And it was a big fight that he ultimately won. But that was in his...
And then later fired the whole band. The entire band that had both recorded and toured with him, he was like, they're coming to see Billy Joel. Your name's not on the ticket. He fires all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm gonna reference the same documentary, but with a different lens. I see this a lot with people that have talent, and they want the talent to be what shines through, and they think if I'm good enough, I'll get recognized. And the reality is that that's not always the case. Putting yourself out there and being the person that has to take the criticism of being Billy Joel. And when you put out a bad album, people aren't going, man, that drummer's a loser. Right? Like, that's not what they say. They're like, Billy Joel put out a crap album. And I don't know if he did or not, but putting yourself out there is important, because ultimately that leverage, that we're the person you're here to see, really matters. And I think that there's a desire for so many people just to be so good that you can't be ignored. And I believe that putting yourself out there is actually important. I think that is an important skill, and being able to develop your own brand and, being willing to step into that light a little bit is in many ways the thing that will protect you, even though it can be scary and painful. So yeah, I'm going to reference the exact same thing, but from a slightly different angle.
Mine is a documentary from 2015 called All Things Must Pass. And this was directed by Colin Hanks. And it's about the rise and fall of Tower Records. And if you're of a certain age, you remember what a huge deal Tower Records was. Like the documentary, subtitle, it's the rise and fall. You get all these great stories about the business of records, promotion, tours, tours that had events at Tower Records locations in major cities, and musical artists talking about what a big deal it was for them personally to see their stuff early in their career being featured at Tower. And then the fall comes with, Napster comes along and the rise of digital music, and that's that. But it's really a wonderful love letter to an important part of music history, and the business and money line runs through the whole thing.
This doesn't follow the category, but I'll give an honorable mention to the movie That Thing You Do. You just mentioned Colin Hanks, but that's a Tom Hanks movie.
Yep.
It's completely fictional, but it basically follows a band going through the cycle of being discovered, being signed, and then ultimately breaking up because they can't make it work for creative reasons between themselves and the label. And I love that movie. And if you want to romanticize what being a musician and what those deals look like, I think that's a fun way to do it, and a great film.
Oh yeah, and it does a wonderful job of capturing sort of what a first hit song was like for bands in the 60s, and the promotional tour that they get swept up in. And it's like, now we got to get you off to Hollywood and get on the fictional version of the Ed Sullivan Show and all. And it's like, and we're going to put you in a movie. You're going to be the backup band in a Frankie and Annette Beach movie. Oh yeah, it's wonderful. But there are those scenes late in the movie that are absolutely about like, well, let's look at the contract that you signed.
Yeah, you're going to do what we want you to do because we want you to put out a radio hit. And that's it.
And if you want the polar opposite end of being a band in fictional movie land, we have Spinal Tap, the has-been hard rock band touring like after anyone cares about them, with all the hijinks that go on in the background and the low tour production and small stages that they're playing. Spinal Tap 2 also on deck to come out very soon, I believe. Yeah,
it's the thing that, and I love that movie so much, and it's one of those movies that you love to like friends who haven't seen it, or be like people in your life that you care about who haven't seen it. You're like, oh my God, please just watch it. Let's sit down and watch it together. That sort of thing, that you pick up more humor each time you watch it. But there's a line at the end of the first movie where one of the guys is like, yeah, why, like, who wants to be a 40-year-old rocker just touring around? Like, now we can give this up and go do the things we wanted to do. And it's like, it's a little ironic that now they're putting out another movie. And clearly, I mean, at this point, the characters have to be in their 70s, right?
Definitely. And they look every bit of it in the promotions I've seen. Now that we're talking about Spinal Tap, I think one of the songs when they flash back to them in the 60s that they did was called Give Me Some Money, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Yeah, Give Me Some Money. I mean, when you think about songs that are like the most purely about money, I mean, that's a satirical song from a fake documentary. That's right up there with Berry Gordy, Money, That's What I Want, which I think was Berry Gordy singing from his heart. It's like, no,
don't we all?
This is what I want. Yeah. Anything we didn't get to? Any songs? Any musical artists? Any lyrics where you're like, oh, this is something I just got to mention real quick. If not, that's fine. I'm just curious.
I mean, there's the Pink Floyd song literally called Money, which is fantastic. I don't know if it's lyrically brilliant, but I'm going to give an honorable shout out to Pink Floyd for Money.
And isn't the opening of that song a cash register?
Yes, it is.
That's a great reference. I can't top that. I'm going to leave it alone.
There you go. If you haven't already, do yourself a favor and give a listen to Ross and Dan's weekly podcast, Check Your Balances. They drop music references every now and then, but mostly they're just having really smart, down-to-earth conversations about investing and money challenges that we all face. I'm Chris Hill. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next week.